Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
So what he did is, and I'm not aware of any other pathologists or medical examiners who do this, but he always took two rape kits. So one of them he would use for doing, various kinds of tests. And back in the day, really the only tests that were available were things like looking at enzymes or looking at blood groupings. I mean, it's all, in hindsight, it's pretty crude. And then the other kit, he would just put in the freezer and never use it for anything. So actually, when he asked me to send him a signed copy of my book, so when did I put in it? Thank you for saving us a DNA sample.
Yeah.
Because this had been sitting there for 38 years. Nobody had ever touched it.
Am I correct in saying that was the sole sample that really connected the entire event, the entire GSK?
Well, what it was a pristine sample. So we do what's called a call rate on, when we're processing the DNA, what the lab does. And so what they're looking for is they want all of the SNPs that you would expect to be there. You want at least 95% or even better, 98% of those to be there. And I think the call rate on this one was something like 98%. I have a case right now that I'm working on where the call rate's only 85%. And it makes it very difficult because you've got pieces of the genome missing. They could be significant pieces for matching with particular people. And it just causes all kinds of problems. But this was absolutely pristine DNA. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It really was. So he just saved it for us.
Yeah, if I recall, it was like an early 70 sample, maybe 77. And I know
Mhm.
about 1983 is when the sexual assault kits started becoming standardized. And I think his was from a homicide, which maybe changes the,
Yeah, it was a rape homicide. Yeah, so
right.
it was actually 38 years old. Yeah.
Wow. And then I know GSK, over 60 victims on that, 15 homicides. Am I right about my numbers on that? So
There were over 100 burglaries. There were or at least 50 rapes and 13 murders that we're aware of. So, of course, the big question is, did he really stop?
yeah, that big dearth of time in between. I can recall something happened in South Florida, the ski mask rapist at the time, and the same just incredible amount of resources that were devoted to that. And the guy was doing essentially the same thing. And they actually got him on Leighton's fingerprints later on, amazingly, because that was something that always haunted me as a kid. Like, how did they put this case down, or whatever happened to him? Or did he just move? And I recently figured that whole thing out, and very undramatically, it just, they matched him to fingerprints, and that was it. It was over with. So this is a close parallel with that, but that's the thing from my youth that I remember.
Well, I have another serial rapist case that I worked on. It was the Clearfield rapist, which was actually out of Utah. It was out of Clearfield, Utah. And so this guy was a long-haul trucker. And at the time that I was brought in to work on the case, there were 9 known rapes that had been connected using DNA. And so I was able to identify this guy. It was another of those cases with all kinds of weird twists and turns in it. But in any event, after he was arrested, they discovered that what he had done is he had actually changed trucking companies so that he could change his trucking route. So he had been doing, the I-80, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And he changed it to instead drive out to the West Coast and up the West Coast. So he was somebody else that looked like he had stopped. The 9 were it. After they arrested him, started realizing where he had been, checking with folks out on the new trucking route. There've been a couple of confirmed, but he's now known to be responsible for several more, not only rapes, but also homicides.
Wow.
So he did not stop. He just changed his trucking route.
Oh, it's incredible how many. I don't know if you know Detective Lindsay Wade, but
I do.
Oh, okay. Well, she's just written a book, and I interviewed her earlier, but she was talking about how many cases could potentially be solved if we just got all of the people that are currently sitting in prison, if we made more of an effort of uploading all of their DNA samples, which they're supposed to have. I mean, anybody
Mm-hmm.
that's a felon, their DNA is supposed to be loaded into the CODIS database, and
Mm-hmm.
but there's thousands and thousands of them that haven't. And
Right.
to your point, how many rapes and murders could be solved if investigators all over the country just had a reference sample?
Mm-hmm.
If there was actually felon DNA sitting in the CODIS database, how many more cases could be immediately solved? And then, as a businessman, I'm always looking at ways to make things more proficient in my company. And, you know, how many millions of man hours have been wasted
Right.
throughout the last 10 or 20 years that could have been solved if people on the other side of the country had just uploaded some database. And then you find this trucker that
Right.
travels across the country and rapes people all along the way. you know just kind of an example of the power of DNA, but also, I don't know. It's kind of government work, and so
Mm-hmm.
we don't expect it to be overly proficient. But at the same time, you're like, geez, come on, really? Let's get on the team effort here and upload all of this DNA, because it has potential to solve a lot more cases.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right.
Was Lindsay, was she the one who put the Ted Bundy DNA into CODIS? Am I right on that?
Yeah,
That's stunning.
yeah,
Stunning that that doesn't happen. Yeah. And there's also a movement to prevent the use of, genetic material for casework, which is also stunning, equally stunning. I have this theory that the folklore boogeyman stories and things like that, these are these stranger homicides that happened. And everybody that I talk to, the hundreds of people, I can go across the country. I was out west on a trip, and they have some kind of connection to a missing or murdered person. And these guys are
Mm-hmm.
just everywhere. Yeah. And yeah. And so once you work this stuff, you never walk away from it, because it's just, it's a true pandemic, I guess you'd say, a national tragedy with what's going on out there. And Jared, you spoke to it, right? I'd say not only the people in prison that they could match to. What about the deceased serial killers, or think about Ted Bundy, case in point, but there's a couple. Florida man. There's quite a few that have operated down here. Like, how many are open out there that could be solved this way?
Mm-hmm. So, talking about Lindsay Wade, Lindsay actually was a very early proponent of using IgG. We actually worked on some cases pre-GSK. So, we, of course, had the same problem that we had with GSK, which was getting SNP profiles. And so I actually talked to Bennett Greenspan at Family Tree DNA. And so she had two cases, the Welch case and the Bastian case. They were both little girls, rape homicides, really brutal. And so we actually got SNP profiles. We only were able to get one on one of the cases. I'm now not remembering which one it was. And we actually were able to, it was just as Lindsay was retiring, which was really unfortunate. And so I identified who a suspect was just as a new detective came in. And back then, I in fact, in all the early cases that involved a perpetrator, I asked to remain anonymous. And so in that case, and the identification of Rasmussen, and then of course GSK, I asked to remain anonymous. But Lindsay was very much in the forefront with using IgG.
yeah. Well, there's so many folks just like you, Barbara, that are just out there that are just brilliant, and you know, God bless you, because who knows how many cases will be solved in the future based on the effort and the work that you put in. So,
Oh, well, thank you.
Tom, you got anything else?
No, just a summary statement. I love this work, and once you're exposed to it, once you see that, and say also that innovative approach that somebody comes from. I said the civilians on the other side, or somebody just says, well, there's a database for blank, or they keep fingerprints on hand for this, and you're like, no, how would I know that? Well, I used to work as whatever, a hairdresser in the military, whatever it was, and these things are solved. Or somebody just having a different ID, they look at something, I'm sorry, a different mindset. They look at something and they say, well, this is, I used to work those kind of cars. I can tell you right now that what they had, and something solved that quickly. And yeah, I'm just amazed every day by something new that I learn, or a different way that somebody put something together. I leave it with one story. I recall towards the end of my career there, We had somebody in Maryland and up in Pennsylvania as well. They had CODIS hit, very similar, like you said, brutal rapes. They kidnapped a child each time. We had a CODIS match to two of those, and I believe a third CODIS match out to one that took place in the line over into Maryland over here. So it was just in the very early stages, probably case 30 or maybe 40 or so on the genetic workup. And my counterpart, she was getting ready to try and do something like that. Somebody said, well, why don't we try doing the fingerprints? Because they have next generation identification, which was an improvement to the APHIS latent fingerprint. She resubmitted and got a hit amazingly. That's simple. And you're talking about like huge amount of expenditure. And then in the same vein, it makes me think, and my mind starts to wander on these things. Who's working these people after you put the case down? Who's following up with these people? And, because everybody's works their own enclave, their own jurisdiction. And then maybe you have the FBI, but if you're not getting a return on investment, how long can you work those open hole cases where you're not getting a return on investment for it? So there is no methodology to it. Like you said, Jared, very adroitly with the business and the efficiency on it. Who's going to get the reward for it? Who's going to get the additional funding? That's a problem. That's a problem. So we have the ability, apparently, to really curb some kind of the forensic science. And I am a bit editorializing here. There was just a case that was pushed out for tool marks saying you can't say it was out of Maryland, you can't say that weapon belongs to that bullet to the exclusion of all others. You have to say it's consistent with. Well, that's sort of impeding on that. So we have the ability, apparently, to challenge science in that respect. But what about the other side, man? We're leaving open gaps out here that these things can be solved. And we all know, the people that work this, that leopards don't change their spots. These guys are killers. And Barbara, I do recall what you said on the summary about GSK and how you felt about them, and we all feel the same way. I think it would be almost everybody does. And the methodology and what he did with putting the plates on the victims' chests and mentally torturing those husbands and things like that. What a horrible human being. But maybe if we put the effort into that to solve and prevent these boogeymen that are out there, we might put a dent into this, a serious dent in this. And we're no longer at the golden age of serial killers, and DNA turned that. So, I would like to keep that going, see that keep on going.
Well, Barbara, if you had to summarize, all the excitement and kind of the feelings that you went through as you were actually helping solve this Golden State Killer case, how would you do it?
Partly it was a feeling of relief, but just that finally we're able to get this guy. Just going to the sentencing and hearing all the victim impact statements, it was emotionally truly exhausting. And you've got this person up there who's pretending that he's this feeble old man. And it was everything about him was just so unrepentant, I guess is the right word. I mean, he mouthed some words about remorse, but you could see that he didn't mean them. And you've got all these people that he has hurt, he has destroyed their lives. So many of his victims, they ended up with, the typical problems that people who've been raped have with alcohol and drugs and broken marriages, and just basically their lives just completely turned upside down. And here's this person up there masquerading as some feeble old man when they've got pictures of him doing burpees in his cell. It's just ridiculous. So a lot of it was just, I guess, a feeling of just relief that we had managed to finally put a name to this guy.
Yeah. Wow. I really appreciate that. It's of the cases that I've been involved with, and especially that the MVAC has helped solve. It's just for us, it's just been this just absolute elation that the thought of not only getting, one of these suspects and the Golden State Killer case, man, this guy's just an absolute monster. Get him off the street and deal him a little bit of justice. But more importantly, I think, is the fact that the victims now can hopefully start the healing process, and possibly even, the justice that they find will help them in the future. So, well,
Yeah,
guys,
I think what came out of that was very much the victims talking about how basically for 40 years, he would call them and threaten to come and kill them after the fact. Some of them years and years and years after the fact. So these people had all been living for basically 40-something years in fear he was going to come back and kill them. Suddenly that was gone.
Wow. And
And I
additionally, what you did was you told them you're not forgotten. We remember you, and we're going to do the right thing. All these years later,
Mhm.
so it's got to be a tremendous gift.
It is an amazing gift, and I see it also with unidentified remains. I worked on a case. This was actually out of Henderson, Nevada, and the detective told me when he called. So we identified this woman whose body had been found, and so when he called her sister, her comment was she'd been doing this now for I think this was like another 40-year-old cold case, 41, 42 years. She said, I can finally stop every time I go past a homeless shelter going in and looking for my sister.
Wow.
I can't imagine what it must be like, not to know what's happened to somebody, and you just keep hoping.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the human turmoil and just expenditure of emotions and tragedy. It's just incredible that it's out there, and it's by a relatively small percentage of society that's causing all this pain. And so every time we take one of these monsters off the street and put them in where they belong, then that alleviates just a massive amount of all sorts of anxiety and tension and fear and just anger, sadness. All these things are alleviated, or at least people can start, like I said, the healing process.
Mhm.
And that healing is generational, and it can continue on for a long time. So, well, guys, any last words?
I would like to ask your listeners or your watchers if they want to help law enforcement, if they have not already done DNA testing, if they would go test at one of the testing companies, doesn't matter which one, and then that they would download their DNA profile and upload it to both GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. Those are the two sites that we're able to use for doing forensic cases. So that would be a huge help. You do need to opt into law enforcement matching, but if people would do that, that could help tremendously.
Oh, absolutely. And Barbara, are there any, if people have cases that they want to have you help them with, is there a way to reach you?
So it has to be law enforcement, but yeah, they can reach me. Either they can Google Firebird Forensics, or that should actually get them to our website, and there's a link on there to send me an email if they want help with a case.
Fantastic. And last thing, the sites that they can go to get their DNA, can you just, I don't know if you know them all, but list the major ones?
Sure. The major ones are, of course, Family Tree DNA, Ancestry, 23andMe, and MyHeritage. There's also one, it's actually a UK company, Living DNA, but you can test at any of the companies, and you can upload to GEDmatch. So it doesn't matter which one you go to. But that would
Well,
be
that's
really cool if people
fantastic.
would do that.
Yeah. No, if it can solve one case, it can solve 100. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. And Barbara, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story. It's been
Well,
awesome.
thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh
Take care.
it's our pleasure.
Yeah, congratulations on the book, by the way. That's awesome.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have all the links to your book and the stories and things in the show notes. So again, thank you for coming on the show.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.